So times are changing. What would you say, Taavi? Are you satisfied not being a prime minister right now, or are you feeling like you would like to be?
Well, former prime ministers, they always know better what to do, right? For me, it was personally a very clear decision that I wanted to do something different in my life and contribute to the sector that is really flourishing. That's the Estonian tech sector. I'm sorry, yeah. But talking about the subject, of course, now the times are really changing, and I think it's almost unprecedented during our lifetime. I think it can be compared to the changes where when I don't know, Soviet Union collapsed or something like that. The war, of course, nobody has even mentioned today COVID. At least I haven't heard which will also affect a lot of things in our lives and in our businesses and in our politics. So yeah, it is unprecedented. It's terrible in many ways, but of course, as an eternal optimist, I would say that changes are also the times when, or crises are also the times when there are a lot of opportunities, and I'm sure that Nordic countries will be among the first ones to seize those opportunities.
Yeah. How about you, Sara? Are you eternal optimist yourself when you're looking around?
Absolutely. I'm an optimist. And I'm also very happy doing what I do, trying to build competence for Sweden for the future and also for the Nordic. I think it was extremely interesting to listen to your presentation, Sara, especially when it comes to that innovation is born out of really good R&D and also collaboration. And we have some really good examples of that, at least from the mobile sector. Ericsson, Nokia, the global standard. GSM was first European standard, and then it ruled the world and became the world's first global standard. But to be able to influence the standardization, you also have to be in the forefront of research and have very good competence. And that is exactly why we from the Wallenberg Foundations are spending 30 billion Swedish crowns on our strategic research programs for the coming 10 years to build competence for Sweden and for the Nordics. Mm. But I'm also an optimist when it comes to regulations for innovation rather than regulations against innovation. Yeah. And that is why we are also having a program on humanities and society's aspects of AI and autonomous systems, handling questions like how can we have ethics together with AI and autonomous systems, how should we change our legal systems and regulations, and what is the impact on the economic system and our social system. But yes, I am an optimist, always.
How about you, Timo? I mean, your field. I mean, many of your startups are in the field of high regulations, or as to say, I mean, of health, for instance. So, what would you say? Are you optimist? Regarding the field where there's a possibility to grow, but at the same time, regulation is there.
Yeah, no, it's all right, and we are obviously active in everything from games to health. Yeah. So very broadly, but. I'm a little bit pessimist, I must say. Okay. Americans won the semiconductors, right? So Americans won the PC computing, they won the internet, they won mobile. Now they're gonna win autonomous AI vehicles, etc. Web3. I'm just a little bit contradicting now, so we get the good discussion.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Go ahead. So, I like that.
So that Wallenberg Foundation money is all okay, but at the same time, last year in the US alone, 200 billion into Web3 companies from private sector. So that's US has been so good at cultivating entrepreneurs and entrepreneurships, and there has been such a good marriage between creating value for the investors that I just can't see who's going to break that dominance, right? And American companies are so powerful currently, and there's nothing wrong for me with that, right? But I'm just always kind of thinking that if Europe really wants to lead, there needs to be a similar regulatory things like in Finland when Sari was at Nokia was going up, in the telecom regulation in the 90s, which was a very really forerunner type of, once in the world type of regulatory change that then enabled Finnish and Swedish companies, to become really big in the area. And then right now, for example, in Web3, Finnish regulators, Nordic regulators, European regulators are just kind of scratching their head in a way that, hey, we need to regulate this because it's dangerous. And we should take the other approach in a way that it's going to happen, how we benefit out of it. So I'm a little bit less optimistic, I must say, for Europe in this.
Taavi, you would like to run
Sorry.
No, we're getting back to it. But Taavi, you are running, autonomous vehicles. That's pretty.
Yeah, I
regulated
should probably
field as well.
argue that saying that Europe makes the best autonomous vehicles, but in a way you're of course right that the American companies are having enormous resources to do so, and one can say that they are somewhat ahead. Again, let's look at the opportunities. If we don't have the level of financing that, let's say, Silicon Valley can provide, perhaps we as Europeans can be more flexible in terms of regulations. Autonomous vehicles is one topic where you need to have strict but enabling regulations. You cannot be too soft, because then accidents will happen and everybody would think that they can make a car drive by itself. But you need to be enabling so that the innovation can happen here in the Nordics, for example. Also the same with platforms. I remember year 2015 or 16 when we had the topic of Uber drivers not paying taxes supposedly in Estonia, and instead of prohibiting Uber, that some countries actually did for some time, we agreed with the tax authority that they will make a special regime and special online tax declaration. So it actually was a positive way, and of course I think the platform topic that was raised before is a huge thing that politicians need to start discussing as soon as possible, because I don't see a way how we can regulate the platform works or gig economy in the same framework as we regulated the work in industrial area. But that's what most of the politicians try to do. They try to push the platform to 8 to 5 and employee-employer relationship, which is not the case actually, and we need to be ready for new forms of work.
But Timo, you've been looking at Israel, for instance, as a kind of an interesting area. But does the Nordic, model has anything, anything which is really competitive against these areas, Israel, the US? Do you find any positive aspects at all?
Yeah, of course.
I'm trying.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be investing in Finnish companies, right?
Okay.
So I would be stupid in that case. But I still need to say that there's this a pile of money in the US, right?
Sure.
But when I was an entrepreneur, the management teams of our competitors were having higher salaries than our total budget for that year, right? Yeah. And we still won the game. So you can be very nimble, very smart, very Nordic in a way, how you build things that really matter, and less money means more focus typically. And the level of engineering competence is world class, not only in Finland and Sweden, but also in Estonia, which is leading in number of unicorns per capita, so over $1 billion valued startup companies. It's really a lab. Everybody should look to Estonia, how they do these miracles. So, yeah.
Wise words.
Yeah, that's right. So there's this part, and then I think that when I was a young student, I had a professor who said that the Finnish industrial companies, like mining companies, for example, are leading in their niche areas. And the reason is that they need to go out of the home market immediately. And the Finnish basic rocks are so hard to drill that if you drill those, you drill everything. And the same goes with Wolt as an example, right? So the food delivery company, that was actually the biggest venture-backed exit by value when it happened with DoorDash in Europe all time. It's once you make this work in Turku, right? So you kind of make it work everywhere in the world.
Well, you got the applause. Nice. So Sara, but what would you say? You are still pouring a lot of money, which is important. And what kind of projects are you exactly looking at? What would be the really of your interest? Which would make difference?
Well, can I first comment on innovation?
Absolutely.
And then I will comment on your question.
Yeah.
So even though I am an optimist, I agree that the system is not perfect.
Yeah.
There are some things that we could do much better. We know that we are really high world class when it comes to research, both in Sweden and Finland and Estonia. We know that we are extremely innovative, so we have many great ideas. We do lack a good funding system to build sustainable companies out of those. And for the ones that we build, there is a tendency, at least in Sweden, that many of them are bought by US and Chinese companies, which is not good. So I'm an optimist, but there are things that we could improve. Now about the areas. So the biggest strategic program that we have is in the area of AI, autonomous systems and software. Yeah. And that's the WASP program. Then we also have programs on quantum technology, data-driven life science, material science for sustainability, wood science, and theoretical physics and mathematics. But the biggest ones are on AI, data-driven life science, and material science.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Taavi, we have an interesting question from the audience that how can IT and AI be a positive impact in ending Putin's war of aggression in Ukraine? What would you say? You're the former prime minister. You should know. A tech guy.
I wish I knew. I really do. I wish I knew. I mean, technology in principle generates positive change, but ending a war. Well, in a way, actually, the war we see, or the Russian aggression we see in Ukraine, technology plays a huge role. The way we see, I think it's the first time in history when we actually get live coverage. And I think having the live footage by very brave Ukrainians, by Zelensky himself, saying that, yeah, tut, I'm here, I'm right here, I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
This is something that changes definitely not only the mentality of Ukrainians being like clearly brave to counteract the aggression, but also the mentality of us Europeans and the world as such. It's without seeing those live footage, it would be something much more distant for us, and I can't say I'm glad. You cannot be glad in this situation, but it's in a way positive still that the international community has reacted the way it has. It is a positive surprise to me, I must say. We have been more united than Putin predicted, and we have been more united than even I predicted.
Timo, what would you say? I mean, is it really like, is this changing, a lot in the field where you operate?
Yeah, just a quick comment on this. Yeah. So some of these technological things we take for granted. So, without mobile phones with a camera, this wouldn't be possible. Without the social media platforms being so powerful, now they are really positive in this instance, distributing everything you just said. Without cheap electronics and embedded software, there wouldn't be drones that the Ukrainians would use, etc. So we take just it for granted. I don't think that there's going to be any sort of a magic AI pill that's going to get developed during this war. For our field, small startup companies typically operate over a cycle. So it takes 5 to 15 years to build a company, and it means that actually startups are very kind of a cycle and crisis and war resistant. So it means that if I invest today into something, it needs to bear fruit after 15 years. And hopefully this is gone after 15 years. And Russia hasn't been a really good source to do R&D or place to do R&D, etc. I think that potentially this could be even beneficial because a lot of Russian IT engineers are going out of the country. So I just read yesterday that was it 80,000 or whatever is the number, IT professionals have left the country and working in companies elsewhere.
This is interesting. What would you say, Sara?
I would just like to comment on the question here. And I think we heard Johan Torgeby talking about the discrepancies in views between the younger generation in Russia and the older generation. Yeah. And I think that IT and AI are technologies that have played a crucial role in getting the information through to the younger generation. But I agree. I don't think there is one i.e. silver bullet that will solve everything. But I think it does play an important role in spreading the information and also enlightening false truth and disinformation.
Yeah. And can you see, any changes in the field where you operate when you in your funding? Do you think that this would accelerate something in the end of the day? Can you see a current?
Yes, I think that we will see more funding going to cybersecurity. That's my guess. In the near future.
Taavi is nodding. You think so too? Yeah.
Yes, and in addition to this live footage, of course, we also see a lot of technological solutions being used in warfare, in the battlefield. The drones, as it was mentioned, they have made a difference. Basically, javelin, it's full of technology. It's not like a very simple weapon, and it's very effective, and it's actually changing the course of the war.
Yeah, interesting. So, Timo, what's the next big thing? What should we be understanding now, which is not really widely understood yet?
Yeah.
It's a small question like that.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Is it like meaning of life, maybe?
Well, maybe your life.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think meaning of life should be better understood. But besides that, I think a lot of people are probably underestimating what goes under climate tech these days. And of course, everybody says that there's a Green Deal and there's a green transformation, et cetera, et cetera. But the ways, there's so many entrepreneurs now, instead of doing software, they are doing like a hardware, to save the planet. Capturing carbon, storing it permanently, reducing carbon, new biomaterials, etc. And that is probably something that is just in the beginning. There's this Moore's law on the computing power. I think there's going to be some sort of a similar, really exponential development on that area. So you're seeing that before the war, the EU carbon credits were kind of climbing to 100 euros per ton, and some analysts thought that it could be even 300. I mean, even at 100, that enables such a technological revolution on carbon capture. So I would kind of watch that space, and I'm highly interested in that myself. That was probably a little bit too lame answer, but I try to look pragmatically also.
What we can see is that the whole energy sector is now going to a complete different direction, especially in Europe. I mean, that's going to change a lot, so we can see renewables. Yeah. It's going to be costly, but in the end of the day, it's most probably positive thing. What do you think, Taavi?
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, this is definitely happening. Another thing, if we start looking at the underlying trends, I think is COVID sped up or accelerated a lot of things as well. E-commerce, remote work. There will be a lot of things that will never be the same because of COVID, and these are the trends also to look into.
We've heard that if prior to the pandemic, there would have been more this kind of holographic and 3D type of interaction being already developed. It would have developed even more fast-paced because people got online and met online with Teams and Zooms and stuff like that. But we were still a little bit lagging behind.
Yeah, but it doesn't need to be super complex. The technological solutions can be sometimes quite simple to actually improve the way we live. Yeah. Also, I would strongly suggest the world to start using digital signature. This is one part of technology that actually in Estonia helped a lot to do interactions in business and also with your government remotely. So it's not out of blue. We had this joke in Estonia that 2 meters is anyways too close for 2 Estonians to be. So we are used to doing things in our own way and then from our home. I think these kind of relatively simple things that should be no-brainers should be used more widely.
I think that's a good example. What do you think, Sara?
I agree completely. I don't think we need 3D holograms. It's more about the uptake and getting used to interacting through a digital medium. And when it comes to digital signatures, you're right on spot in Estonia. It's it's such a help.
And by the way, the ID card with a chip on it was funded or like invented here in Finland. That's a fun fact. More than 20 years ago.
Here, here.
So trying to find those things that really make a difference and make it easier to do business, to do our work, I think those are the ones that we should focus on short term.
Yeah. There's let's have a final round, wrapping up with the question coming from the audience, that could the Nordic model be used to create an innovation Nordic country culture innovation program, and how can we be competitive, for instance, in the field of AI vis-a-vis like the US? Would you?
Yeah, I'm just a very simple person in this sense, and it all starts with people. This is like so jargony that I hate to say this, but for example, in Finland, which is the kind of a main area where I'm operating, we just don't have enough professionals. And now I'm not only talking about the fraction of the top of the pyramid, but I'm just talking like more broadly. So we just need to have more people working in these areas. Those guys will be kind of in the positive sense, like the army of change in a way, like for the foreign companies to come with the R&D centers here, for the Finnish and international entrepreneurs, to found companies that become and grow big. I was just discussing with somebody, Dean of Taltech, over the lunch break, and he said that the biggest problem for the Estonian companies is that there's nobody to recruit anymore because everybody's recruited already. So it's in a way that entrepreneurs will come where there's an opportunity, and if there's a good resource, then there's an opportunity to build these companies, and that's going to change it. More entrepreneurs and more resources, in my opinion.
Okay. How about that?
Yeah, well, everybody is recruited, but roughly 22 years ago, our then president, Lennart Meri, said that Estonia should find our own Nokia. And I guess by today we have found it, and it is the kind of startup set of mind of the society and the economic climate and the environment that is very favorable for startups. I think it's in a way very practical. Estonians are quite practical people, I must say, and it's very practical because building steel factories out of scratch is not that easy. But we do want to catch up with Finland and Sweden, and we are, by the way, a Nordic country. That's something that should be made official somewhere.
Sure.
And just if I may conclude, the Nordic countries, for many, I would say, objective reasons, are actually the best place for innovation to happen. Being relatively small is not necessarily a bad thing. We should use it in our benefit, and we should really accelerate innovation together.
Right. And then Sara, finally, what would you say?
I think that building competence is a key success factor, and that is why we are spending so much money on these strategic research initiatives. The objective is to build competence for Sweden and Swedish industry. So we are running graduate schools where we will have more than 1,200 PhD students. And also one requirement is that this should also be spread down on master level education because, as we heard, everyone with competence is already recruited. We need more people with the right competence. If you look at how Sweden and Finland, I don't have any rating on Estonia, but how Sweden and Finland are rated in AI service, we are doing pretty good when it comes to competence, research. Finland is actually ranked number 13 in the world and Sweden number 19. Sweden is a bit ahead when it comes to competence, talent, research and infrastructure. Finland, on the other hand, is better at executing. And Finland is far ahead when it comes to government strategy. There Finland is number 8, where Sweden is number 47. So to improve, build more competence, but at least in Sweden we need a more clear government strategy as well.
All right, thank you very much indeed. And let's give an applause for our great panelists.